course, tomorrow night, Thanksgiving night, Ravens-Bengals here in Baltimore. And if it's Bengals week, that means we get to catch up with one of our absolute favorites. Of course, host on WLW out in Cincinnati, former NFL linebacker, the great Rocky Boiman is back with us. Rock, happy Thanksgiving, my friend. Thank you for taking the time.
Glenn, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, brother. Great time of year to be with loved ones, but always happy to be on your show, man.
Dude, are you responsible for any of the Thanksgiving meal in your house? Is there anything that you like take ownership of and say, I'm preparing this?
Absolutely not. I simply show up and the meal is prepared. Everything is laid out. I am told what time to be there, and I just sit down and eat, Glenn.
That is a good life.
Sorry to say, but that's the situation, yes.
That is a good life. I had that for a little while in my life, but then the last few years, I finally had to take responsibility for the turkey. And I don't actually mind that, as you would imagine. Like, smoking a turkey is actually a pretty fun way to spend a few hours on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm all right with that part of it. But I do.
I'll tell you what. If I had a smoker or like a deep fryer, you hang out outside, have a beer, have a cigar, and roast that. Yeah, man, I'd be all for that.
Way worse ways to spend a Wednesday afternoon and evening than doing that. So I don't mind it too much. All right, Rocky, we play Would You Rather Wednesday here on the program. 2 weeks ago when we were starting to map this out, we had a scenario where we said, would you rather the Ravens face Joe Flacco on Thanksgiving night or Joe Burrow perhaps in his first game back, not knowing exactly where he is health-wise? And I still think that the Ravens would have been better off facing Joe Flacco, but you tell me your thoughts on what we should expect from Joe Burrow in his first game back tomorrow.
Yeah, Glenn, it's hard to say. You know, he's had, over 2 months off. He's got the toe injury. And what's really strange is everybody around here, myself and really anybody who's involved with the Bengals, I mean, the word when he got injured was, boy, this is really, really bad. Toes are complicated injuries, and there was a dislocation, and it requires surgery. So I think everyone thought, okay, it's probably done for the rest of the year. If not, maybe if there's a playoff run mid-December, maybe he'll give it a go. But the fact that he's coming on Thanksgiving weeks ahead of the time frame that was originally put out there is I guess kind of I won't say startling, but it's caught people by surprise a little bit. So the debate is, are they rushing him back?
Mm-hmm.
Is he rushing himself back and maybe he's not quite ready? So I think that, all those factors are still in play, but of all accounts we're getting now is everything he attacked the rehab, he went ahead of schedule, and he feels great, and he's ready to go. And I've been saying really for weeks, the debate is, okay, if the season's basically over, which it more or less is for the Bengals, do you bother putting him out there? And I say, look, if he is 100%, ready to go and no restrictions, okay, no we can't really roll him out to the left because that would put unneeded – none of that. If there's no diversions from the game plan and he can just go out there and let it rip, I say, yes, go ahead and play him. If there are any restrictions, or if there's things you're not comfortable with, and that thing's not feeling 100%, I don't think he should. So the fact that he's playing, my mind tells me he is 100% ready to go, and we'll see what happens.
The Ravens have had a miserable history against Ja'Marr Chase specifically over the years. We know a year ago, 457 yards, 5 touchdowns between 2 games. With no T. Higgins tomorrow night, should we expect that, he might actually have all of that in one game tomorrow?
Well, look, Joe Burrow's not stupid, nor is Joe Flacco. Much of the reason for Joe Flacco's remarkable success under crazy circumstances coming in hot off the street was the fact that both those quarterbacks are smart enough to know, get the ball to Ja'Marr Chase. I mean, I always say, Glenn, football is very simple. Get your best players the ball.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're going to go down, if you're going to lose a game, you're better off as a coach standing behind the podium after the game saying, well, look, we tried to get the ball to Ja'Marr Chase 20 times tonight. The Ravens did a great job taking him away. Tip of the cap to you guys. you'd rather do that than, try to, you get caught up in the scheme and we got to do this, we got to go through the progressions. No, find ways to get your best player the ball, especially with Joe Burrow coming back, and I'm sure there's going to be a degree of rust to him. I think he's going to look early and often to Jamar Chase.
Yeah, that would be my expectation. We'll see how the Ravens answer it. He is Rocky Boiman from out in Cincinnati, WLW. He's with us here on GCR. Rocky, the joke, of course, with Joe Burrow coming back is, great, is he going to play defensive back, right? Because that's obviously the issue. Now, I know it wasn't maybe quite as bad. I guess if the bar is really low, then perhaps we say it wasn't quite as bad against the Patriots. The Ravens have had, actually, oddly, a lot of offensive problems in the last couple of weeks. They're just 5 of their last 14 in the red zone in particular. Are the Bengals so abominable defensively that, like, this is the cure that the Ravens have been waiting for an offense that's been a little sluggish in recent weeks?
It really could be, Glenn. This defense is not very good. And again, go back to everyone's, Al Golden, the scheme is in this and that. No, it's very simple. The Bengals don't have enough great players on defense. And their best player, Trey Hendrickson, hasn't played for a couple weeks, won't play here Thursday night. So, again, you can have all the scheme in the world and draw up all these defenses, and I think Al Golden is one heck of a coordinator. But when you ain't got the horses, it's really tough. So the Bengals are going to go with really the plan they had even coming into the season, which is we got to outscore people. We got to outscore people, and Joe Burrow is capable of doing that. Obviously much harder without T. Higgins in there. Obviously much harder being the fact that he's not quite in the rhythm with being out so long. But, yeah, I mean, this defense has been bad. It's just, the tackling – and again, the lack of impact plays. There's just no – I always say, Glenn, my rule on defense is, and every good defense I was a part of in 8 years, you need about 8 guys that are really good or fundamentally sound, do their job, are smart. Then you need 3 game wreckers. Okay, you need guys that just flat go out there and make plays. Now, I was never of the game wrecker type, but again, the good defenses I played on were the ones that had a Dwight Freeney or a Robert Mathis that could go get a sack, or had a Bob Sanders in the at the safety position that would just go make a play, right? Not even within the confines of the defense, just go make a play. Or Kevin Carter or Javon Curse would have a sack. That's what this defense is lacking. They don't have any of those game wreckers, and it really shows.
You bring up, the question of, is it worth it with Joe Burrow? And I guess the flip side argument is they won 5 straight to end the season a year ago and damn near, backed into the postseason doing it. Is this team capable of going on that type of run, Rock, or is that just, like, there's just no way to believe that's possible given the defense?
I would honestly be shocked if they could have some sort of season turnaround and get in the playoffs and have success. Just, again, going back to that defense. That has been consistently the issue. Now, you mentioned they did play better, probably their best overall game against the Patriots last week, and it was good to see. It's some of the guys that had a lot of question marks. Geno Stone has really been kind of a letdown since he's come to Cincinnati. He had 13 tackles and a pick. Barrett Carter. We got a couple of young linebackers that the Bengals have really made a focus on clearing the deck for these young linebackers. They must think a lot of them and think they're the future. We're talking about Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter. It hasn't really shown up on the field or on tape. Now last week Barrett Carter had 16 tackles, so that's very positive and good news for him. But in general, I just don't think this defense, again, has the game records that you need to really make an honest playoff run, especially now being so far behind the 8 ball. The Bengals been able to win the game last week, or the game a couple weeks ago against the Bears. They were right there. Probably should have, could have won that game. If they had maybe 2 more wins in that win column, I think the playoffs would be realistic, even with this defense, but without it, I really don't see it, to be honest.
What about on the flip side? Is there any danger at all for Zach Taylor? Like, I don't know that you can blame him for Joe Burrow getting hurt, or, I know the defense isn't his area necessarily, but the situation is what it is. Is there any risk at all for Zach Taylor moving forward?
You mean in terms of playing Joe Burrow or
No,
just him being the coach?
yeah. I mean, like, is there any world where that you lose maybe 3 of the next 5, something like that, and you're talking about Zach Taylor being on the hot seat?
Yeah, look, I think if this was any other franchise, I think that certainly would be the case. And there's lots of franchises out there that have a quicker trigger finger than the Bengals do. The Bengals and Mike Brown are
Yeah.
very, very loyal. Mike Brown historically has talked about how, since he was a kid, he was in the business of football, right, with his dad, and he had to see, coaches get fired and families get relocated. He hates that. He absolutely hates that, which I think is a very, very noble, very, very noble thing. And so I'll also say that I don't know if I don't know if Zach Taylor is probably the prime issue here. To me, it's the person that's in charge, the people that are in charge of acquiring the talent. Glenn, you go back through the recent drafts, and they have just missed and missed and missed on top players. And that says nothing about the good franchises, and the Ravens have done in the past, and the Eagles do it for sure, getting those top players and find those diamonds in the rough in the 4th and the 5th and the 6th round. They've not done that at all, and they've missed on some recent top draft picks. Shamar Stewart, I mean, you may have as many tackles as Shamar Stewart, first-round defensive end. Miles Murphy out of Clemson a couple years ago has flashed a little bit, but he's never been that dominant player. Joseph Osai, same sort of thing. So, yeah, it's just I put most of the blame on the people that are in charge of finding and evaluating the talent. I think they deserve most of the blame here for why this season has gone the way it has.
I know, we're obviously not likely to see him on Thursday, but I get that, like, you look and the record was 1-5, but what was the emotion, the feeling for that fan base out there, and this kind of crazy Joe Flacco experience that they've had? You know how beloved he is here. What was the ride like despite the record, and what were the feelings from Bengals fans and the people of Cincinnati about what Joe Flacco did over the last 6 weeks?
People here absolutely loved it, man. They absolutely appreciated what Joe Flacco was able to come in here and do. And certainly, for me and my business, right, just like you, it gave us something to talk about.
Yeah.
I think, Bengals fans next year and 10 years from now are going to look back very, very fondly on Joe Flacco and what he was able to do coming in here, very short notice coming in, and for him to perform the way he did. And I still think he's capable of performing at that same level. He's just a little beat up, right? He's got the shoulder. Now he had the finger last week. And look, he's 40 years old. That's kind of expected. But, just a remarkable, run that he had. And I'll point this out, Glenn, and I do a lot on my show. I hope Joe Burrow can learn some things from Joe Flacco. In my opinion, Joe Burrow's issue is he's still trying to play hero ball out there and make a play every single time, right? And I think that's why he gets in, because I made this point, like, every game Joe Burrow starts, it's the offensive line stinks, the line stinks, the line stinks. Well, that conversation wasn't really had when Joe Flacco was at quarterback. Why? Because as a more veteran guy, I watched the games and I saw him, look, somebody gets cut loose, boom, that ball gets thrown into the dirt, right? There's a blitz coming, it didn't get picked up, that ball gets sailed into the 12th row. Or maybe he just takes the check down instead of trying to make the 20 or 30-yard play down the field. For no other reason than his future, health. I think Joe Burrow needs to learn how to do that and understand that there's no play or even game that is worth his health and the sacrifice of that for what he means being a franchise quarterback. I think that's one thing, hopefully, in my opinion, and I don't know if that's a popular opinion or not, but that's my opinion, what I think. I'm hoping Joe Burrow kind of learns a little bit from seeing the veteran Joe Flacco out there, not just go be a thrower and be a dynamic playmaker, but be a quarterback and understand when to give up on a play and when to move forward.
That is interesting. That is really compelling stuff. I wish that we could just go back and take all those press conferences he did and bottle them up into like a podcast series and Like, God, it's so funny,
Great.
Rock, because I had the opportunity. I got to know Joe really well while he was in Baltimore, and when he was
Oh, very
drafted,
cool.
when he was drafted, his dad told us, he said, I don't think you're gonna like Joe that much. He's painfully dull, and every time I talked to him, he gave me gold. Gave me gold
Yeah.
every time. He's just a really interesting person, man, and so. Happy for him that he got to have maybe if this is it, who knows? Maybe in 2 weeks he'll be in
Yeah.
Minnesota or something like that playing football.
There you go. Or maybe we'll be back next year as a
Right?
backup here. Who knows, man? But I mean, good for him for just staying in shape and staying mentally into it and having a really great moment here late in his career.
At Rocky Boiman 50 is how you follow him. Did I see it's Florida State for you this week?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I got the big rivalry game now. Both
Yeah, not
both teams
right.
are having.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the ones of years past, but still a compelling matchup. You got. I mean, gosh, Florida came into the season with so much hype and so much hope, and DJ Lagway is the unquestioned starter, and they changed some things on defense, and they're playing some younger guys. Had a lot of it, and it just coming off a 4 wins last year to end the season is like, man, this team's going to roll, and it just hasn't gone that way. And for Florida State, kind of almost the same thing, coming off a horrible year, but then game 1 they beat Alabama 31-10. And even now, Glenn, their offense is like in the top of the ACC and in some offensive categories in the top 5 in the nation. I mean, they offensively, they are great, in big plays out of Castellanos, the quarterback, but, a lot of turnovers and some things on defense. So it'll be very compelling, though, I think, just to see how each team desires to finish this season and then bump into next year.
It's Saturday, 4:30 on ESPN2 for that one. Rocky, appreciated you having me on your show yesterday. Thanks, as always, for doing this today. And we'll look forward to chatting again in a couple of weeks, all right?
Glenn, you do a great job. Always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for coming on my show. And, yeah, man, we'll do it again here in a couple of weeks.